So one of the main issues that we face with training delivery is the ability to reach a wide audience. And as one of the things that PDA provides is we have an in-person or a location here in Bethesda, Maryland, where we provide hands-on training in person, where we have equipment and machines and instruments where people get to have a hands-on experience. But that has a limited reach to the global audience. And so we're looking to be able to work with companies, work within the network within PDA to be able to provide the same quality of training that we provide and with the same delivery, same curriculum anywhere in the world. And we need a vehicle or a method to be able to provide that. And that's one of the reasons why we partnered with Innerspace to provide that.
I think this was very much the beginning to think about more what can make PDA more independent from physical locations to be able to provide world-class training wherever is needed. And basically, what is so much interlinking both of our organizations is that also Innerspace has identified this issue that training in its quality is very, very different depending on where you go, very different, which then as a consequence leads to very different levels of people being trained. And what we try to do by using virtual reality on the one side, but also frame by frame risk profiling on the other side, what we will talk about later a little bit, is getting to a more standardized way how people are going to be trained and to provide a learning environment in VR that is really, on the one side, realistic, but also very engaging and very much focused on the most important topics of aseptic processing, that people can really receive the same quality of training all over the world.
And I think back to when we started out, this journey was back in 2018. I believe PDA was on this mission to look at a different way to get to that global audience. And we looked at online training and we thought, okay, that's a way to go where we can do online webinars and live courses online. But we've all experienced that, and this was in pre-COVID, we've all experienced that it had limited engagement from that standpoint. And I had met Sebastian at a PDA conference in Amsterdam, and we had discussed, he had the technology there, and there were other vendors there, and I was trying out everybody and looking at, what company had the best fit for PDA, not just a supplier or an equipment manufacturer that says, here's a product that you have, but that somebody that really wanted to partner with PDA to design and deliver training courses. And I was really impressed with the technology, but also the level of engagement from Sebastian and the folks at Innerspace of saying, we want to provide the highest quality of training. And I was excited at that point to say, wow, this is something that will provide us the capability to deliver that training in South America, Asia Pacific, even in Europe, where we can take this set curriculum that we have and provide the same user experience or learner experience anywhere we wanted to.
Yeah. And this is very much interlinking with the overall challenge when we talk about high quality training. It's not only about the content, it's very much about how it is going to be delivered. And because of that, many different expertise fields need to work together very closely. And for Innerspace at that moment in time, you talked about 2018, 2019, this is where we actually started. We really got into the virtual reality space, elaborating and identifying all of this amazing capabilities of this technology, really providing a very, very real, convincing environment that people make believe that they are actually in a clean room without being there, that they are experiencing things, being confronted with risks, what they normally are not confronted with in their life. And like in a flight simulator, being able to really simulate certain situations that you need to be prepared for. But this was just the beginning, because on our way to define the partnership, it became more and more obvious that it is not only about using the virtual reality technology. It is much further in improving the entire design and the entire content structure of our training courses, David, right?
I think that was one of the things that impressed me when we first met. Was it wasn't just here's a clean room environment and look how realistic it was. It was, how do we transfer the knowledge that someone would get in that environment and the learner experience and that engagement of, applying the learning objectives, not just here's a fancy looking clean room, look how realistic this is. Let's actually, what learning concepts do we want them to apply in that environment, which made a huge difference in terms of looking for that partner, because we could have just bought an off-the-shelf VR system and said, design a clean room and be done with it. But that was a short-term solution, not a long-term partnership. And I think that's, as this grew, as we went through our first few iterations of this, where we tried it out, we integrated it into one of our classes, a fundamental of the aseptic process, and we said, look, let's see where this fits in and actually try it out. And as we went through that process, we realized this has a lot of potential in what we want to do with this. It's not just here's a new fancy tool. This is an actual, how do we transfer knowledge to the industry, and how can this be a powerful tool to apply that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's for me, it's always helpful to think really in the pieces of knowledge on the one side and training on the other side. It is psychologically always a challenge to transfer knowledge, to really make sure that people not only understand what they are experiencing, but that they are able to really take this with them and apply it to the places where it matters, in the manufacturing facility, or when they are in quality, for instance, or working on setting up manufacturing processes whatsoever. So what I think one of the things what we are going to be very much focusing on within the next years is the entire field of how can we transfer knowledge in a way that it's easier for people to apply it, and not that they need years and years of painful experiences sometimes to understand principles, fundamentals of aseptic processing, that it's more intuitive and more effective for them to identify risks and to know how to deal with them.
Well, I think that's one of the things that virtual reality will provide is it's very difficult to get into an actual clean room and sit there with your own set of eyes looking at that. And from a manufacturing, operator to a quality operations, quality assurance operations specialist, they're going to get that experience where they're going to get that knowledge, that the critical things that they need to know in that environment, so that it'll help progress the learning experience faster. It's not just read and understand an SOP, or here's a book to read on this. There's, some basic knowledge. Here's an application in that environment, and moving on to expediting their actual qualification to get them into that space. Like you'd mentioned about, it's not going to take years now. We're talking about looking at it in a shorter term.
Yeah. In a shorter term, and really lowering the barriers for people to work in this industry effectively, and also feeling more comfortable with the risks they have to deal with. I mean, I think one of the significant parts in pharmaceutical manufacturing, especially in aseptics, is that most of the risks we are talking about are not very intuitive. They're very abstract for most people: microbial contamination, and so on, first air, all of those different concepts which make sense from a theoretical standpoint for most of them, obviously. But on the one side, it's not so easy to get really a good feeling-wise understanding about what this actually means. How does certain principles of the clean room protect the product, etc., etc. So what we try to do with using VR is to really leverage the power of this technology to make it easier to understand what this all is about. Make it easier to understand what it is all about. Because only when this is more clearer, those people will have better chance to really focus day by day on their processes and their work. And I think we agree both on that this is sometimes very much lacking. in the industry.
Well, I think that's one of the things
Yeah.
that we looked to do with this as we evolved in the training design aspects of it. We looked at it and said, we're not only just providing knowledge, but we want them to think about risk. And I think that's where we took it. We did take a step back in our infancy of the partnership to say, what are we really trying to do here? It's not just here's VR. We actually integrated risk into a course that we currently didn't, or we in the past we didn't talk a lot about risk.
Yeah.
And it said, well, we were missing something, and that's why this became essential in our partnership. It wasn't just you're handing something over and saying, have good luck with this. It was we learned from each other in that process. And so as we looked to integrate, risk profiling into our training course, we sat there and said, wow, we've got a really good, solid training course now that we can deliver anywhere around the world.
I mean, talking about that, I think what is really very much identity building for us is that we want to deliver a very risk-based training approach and a really data-driven training approach. So when we talk about using risk profiling, frame-by-frame risk profiling, the intent is really to help us to identify and quantify more objectively where the risks are in detail at pharmaceutical operations. Because the more precisely we know that, the better we can really control it. And the more we can quantify it, the better we can also provide to the trainees what is really important to take care about in manufacturing and what are the things that really shouldn't happen. And I think when this partnership is evolving, I think it became clearer and clearer and clearer that this industry has always, when it comes down to risk, there's a lot of kind of understanding that this is the most important thing. We wanna try to avoid as much as possible, contamination control strategy, Annex 1, etc. But when it comes down to really hard, objectively quantifying where it is, it's always a little bit tough, So what we try to do within our training course design is that we use frame-by-frame risk profiling to deliver the knowledge and the technology you need to understand really, okay, where the biggest risks are and how to deal with them in certain topic areas.
Well, I think that's why we picked our Fundamentals of Aseptic Processing training course as the sort of test program or test training course for this, because it covers, in the title itself, it's the Fundamentals of Aseptic Processing, where we talk about microbiology, environmental monitoring, gowning, cleaning and disinfection, and clean room behavior. Those elements are something that are fundamental to an aseptic environment, but it also allows us to take that and say, now you have the basics or the fundamentals in this, and we can apply this technology, the virtual reality, and the risk profiling even more in depth in our courses that we offer in cleaning disinfection, where we have 3 hours of instruction in the fundamentals on cleaning disinfection. We have a 3-day training course on cleaning disinfection, and we primarily hold that here in our training facility here in Bethesda. But with the input of virtual reality, we can now run that same course as it's standardized throughout the globe, where it's the same experience. Doesn't matter if you're making a pharmaceutical aseptic processing, through aseptic processing, you're going to get the same experience anywhere, and that's critical for us.
And I mean, it really leads to standardization in terms of really delivering this high quality everywhere in the same way. And I think it's really both parts. So frame-by-frame risk profiling allows us together to be way more specific in quantifying risk and communicating them as knowledge, to the industry in those training courses, whereas virtual reality helps us to make it easier to really experience the consequences of this risk, to experience critical moments, to experience what it actually means to run certain operations, to make it more easier, to make it more easy to actually dive into certain environments. But both pieces, knowledge and training, knowledge and experience, they are both extremely important to us. And I think what we try to intend with this partnership over the next years, with the help of this technology, to bring those both things to the next step.
And that's why PDA is excited to have Innerspace as the official partnership with Training Course Design and Delivery, because that is not just a one-time event. It is a continuous partnership where we work together and looking at from the fundamentals to the more advanced topics that we go through, and looking at how we can work together to make sure that we are producing safe, effective drugs in the industry.
Yeah.